We are live, and I know Manda and Mike are already sitting there waiting for us.
Just like audio, right? Because as I eat this chicken wing, let me eat this one quickly. Oh,
Ah,
that's what I was saying. Oh, about, but then
subscription.
I had chicken in my mouth.
I was very confused for a moment there.
I was like, oh, nom, nom, nom.
Hi, Manda. How are you? Really good to see you. Natasha, all right. The crew is already
Oh,
here in
everybody's here.
anticipation of our arrival. I like this.
I'm just trying to finish my chicken wing real quick. Because
So,
only Rob gets to enjoy my chicken wing eating.
I'm enjoying chicken wings by proxy, people.
This weekend we don't have to do that by proxy.
No, not by proxy.
Nope. IRL.
Yes.
Oh. Oh, that's a cute little crab, a little waving crab.
Like that. Where is that from?
I don't know.
Hmm.
PC Patty.
All right.
Oh, PC Pat.
All right. All set?
Ready. Yes.
Here we go.
Chicken wings have been consumed. We may start the stream.
I mean, granted, it is.
Maybe what else is new? On par.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Loremaster Arcanum. This is LMA number 125. This is also the last stream in the. John had decided to leave the people to run the asylum, and well, things have happened. There may have been dinos yesterday. If you were tuning in, we have a couple of screen glitches on Sundays, but stream last Tuesday, stream this Tuesday, a couple of LMAs, and things will return to their normal chaos on Sunday with the return both Tears of Air and Fall of Red Dawn. Demon Gun, thank you very much for the subscription. Kai, good to see you. Good to see you, Moose, as well. And so, first of all, hi, Vivi.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Tired.
Yes.
Tired of the heat. I'm also annoyed of the heat. In Canada, this is not appropriate weather for us.
Yeah, it is not entirely as warm as it should be around here, which is really weird. So I'm enjoying it for now. I'll take it for as long as I can get it. But it is the longest day of the year. So
Solstice.
Happy Midsummer,
Solstice?
everyone. Yes.
Midsummer solstice. It sounds so like I don't know.
like the start of a fantasy story.
Right.
And on that slight segue, we move into tonight's topic. Last week we discussed story arcs in a campaign and building them, and the things that you have to think about. And we kind of touched on tonight's topic because it's hard to leave it out. But tonight we want to talk about character arcs and building character arcs with your for your players, with your players, and how do you get there, and how do you keep it going, keep it interesting, and how do you tie it into the things that the player wants versus the needs of your the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you, Vivi, in terms of the games that you've run, how have you handled it?
Like character arcs, like
Yes,
that I've kind of created in session, or or character arcs that they have kind of created.
Character arcs, story arcs that you've created for specifically for like a given character.
Okay, so I have a couple of players, two of them in particular, who decided they wanted to be brothers of some sort.
Mhm.
I thought maybe he was gonna draw. I'm not drawing anything.
I'm pretty sure Pat made that same joke last week.
um, yeah, so in regards to that, they ended up deciding to want to be brothers, and they kind of let me go. They had like DM discussion. You can do whatever you want with that, kind of like that part of our backstory.
Mhm.
And I can't remember what exactly it is in particular, but they were afraid of a certain beast. And so I came up with this. It said something like they're afraid, they're like terrifyingly afraid of a certain like beast or enemy or whatever. That was like part of their character arc, their backstory. Because they were related, I kind of spun this tale of which a shapeshifter kind of entered their home unwillingly and like was in their home and pretended to be their little sister's friend for a very, very long time. So much so
Ooh.
that she almost became like part of the family and turned out that she was actually a shapeshifter. And they came home one night and like both their sister and their mother was slain by this demon that now haunts them forever. So it's kind of a nice character arc in the sense
Wow,
where
that got dark really quick.
real quick, yeah.
Holy left
But it,
turn.
it was yeah, but it was really really good because I don't think that they were expecting me to kind of throw something that intense at them, but it was kind of a nice. I watched, I think a long, long time ago when Rory was still doing his podcast, he had somebody on and they were talking about keeping like an eerie kind of theme within your, like how to keep or play kind of an eerie theme across and have this sense of like, um, not safe, like you don't kind of always feel uncertain or just not
Mhm.
safe and trying to play that. So I really like to play that if I can. Wow, nice character arc. Thanks, Rhonda. They were really looking for something, and again with this whole thing is because with I think last time I'm like all over the place, ADHD. Sorry, so bad.
That's right.
But last time we were talking
I'm right
about
there with you for the ride. Just hang
yes,
on. Strap
last
in.
time
Let's
we were
go.
talking about making one shots and like being able to keep these characters and have like one shots and essentially that you don't have to make a new character for all the time.
Mhm.
So we really wanted to really work on a really solid foundation for a character arc and character backstory that was kind of a driving force for them. So basically it's kind of like what's that ghost hunting show with the two guys, Sam and something. Amanda, I know you probably know this.
I I think this actually came up last night.
Did it?
I know I've had this conversation with.
Supernatural. Thank you very much,
Oh,
you guys.
okay.
So
Oh
it's
no, okay.
basically like a
I was thinking of the one of the reality shows. I wasn't thinking of Supernatural.
oh, okay, sorry. Yeah. So Supernatural. So it's kind of like it's kind of like basically they're like they get called to do these jobs essentially is how I have
Mhm.
the campaign set up. But instead of it having such a empty kind of storyline and stuff like that, I wanted to have that really hard driving character arc for those characters to really have a reason to want to hunt demons and kind of like, slay them and stuff like that. So that's kind of where that came about.
Right. Okay. That's yeah, no, that is definitely intense. I was like, "Oh, this sounds really cute. Oh, they just killed your family. Wait, what?" So
What
did
a
they have any inkling as to what this the changeling was going to potentially do? Was was
they
was the potential for that happening discussed ahead of time?
yes, it was. This wasn't something that was thrown upon them because I had kind of already laid out the scene of kind of that campaign. I
Mhm.
suppose in the sense where like there was a lot of oppression and something was kind of plaguing the town and it was very similar to back home for them with the oh look it's cute, oh it's dramatized.
Mm.
Yes, me. But yeah, so um the story and the story
Mhm.
arc was very similar and matching to the character arc, and I kind of played off of that as well to kind of get that story going. So I think they were already kind of we already discussed about what it was going to look like and stuff like that. So they're all good with that.
Nice. So, Tracy, I am the Bean played with me last night. Was
Hello.
and we all had great fun. Dr. Fred Jr., good to see you. So you kind of touched on a bit, but let's start with at the beginning for character story arcs. I guess the first place we should probably start is character backstories.
Right.
Uh, Now I've mentioned one of the things that I've normally big on. I love character backstories. I am
Mhm.
all in favor of character backstories. Um, I am also very much in the tent of character backstories should be done, with in consultation with the GM. Not to say that the
Yes.
GM's writing the backstory, but you know, there should be check-ins to make sure that the backstory is going to fit what the campaign is about.
Yes, correct. And tying that in. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So, having said that, what are I mean, you got to start somewhere, and the backstory is a wonderful thing to delve into. What are some elements of the character's backstory? You mentioned an interesting one, something first of all that the two of them were brothers of a sort,
Yeah.
and that they had something that they were afraid of. What
Yes.
are some other elements in a backstory you think would be good to pull from in terms of building, character arcs?
Ooh, that's a tough one. So I'm not like I feel like I'm a little bit of the opposite because I think I like to write typically when I create characters personally for myself, I like to create a loose based kind of backstory. I know
Mhm,
a lot of people, some people like to get really in depth with their backstory. Um, Personally for me, I like to kind of have a loose based backstory and then kind of build that story with the campaign or the setting that I'm in.
mhm.
Um, that's typically how I usually like to do that. I don't know. What about you, Rob? We'll just spin the question back on you so I give a better understanding of the question.
Sure. So the I and I'm with you in terms of it being loose. I people who write the really, really long story backstories, I mean, it's
Mhm.
fantastic.
Yeah.
For me, I look at there's a number of things that I try to think of for my character, and things that I might ask a player in a campaign of mine. Uh, First of all, what is their character's motivation? Why are they going adventuring in the first place? What drives them?
Yeah.
Um, Also, you know, why did the character choose that particular class, which I kind of see as a profession of
Mhm.
sorts? Why did they become a mage? Why did they take up the sword? These elements are things that can you can build something into if it also kind of informs what their goals are. I might
Right.
ask specifically, what
Yeah.
are you after? Where do you want your character to be? What do they want to become?
Right. And that can help drive the story in the sense where you're enticing them to adventure with kind of things that their
Mhm.
drive is, right? Like whether it be money or fame or, to spread the good word or whatever it is.
I mean, it may be for a cleric, it may be advancement in their church.
Yep.
It whatever the case may be, there are things that they want that it once I know that, it's easier to for me to find elements of that I can put into the overall story. Um, Now you also touched on another thing. I want to know, who the people they know are. It doesn't, and I'm not just necessarily talking their family. Um, I'd like to know who the family is. But
Mhm.
the family that they actually communicate with, that are important to them. Um,
Yes.
I also
In
want,
John, I feel like in John's sense, he wants to know those things so he can torture them with you. I'm just
listen.
kidding. Maybe
I
a little
well,
bit.
well, that see, here's where, and this is where kind of has to be in kind of consultation. I also want to know which of those characters are off limits.
Yes.
if there's anybody there that, you know, having something potentially happen. That's not to say that anyone who's not off limits is going to die. Though that doesn't. But I mean, the question: who can be put in danger?
Right.
Who is, in terms of potentially dying? Because I can work with any of them. I just want to know
Yes.
who those are.
Yeah. Yeah.
But even beyond that, I'd like to know, who else is important to them. Who did they have a teacher, a mentor, a best friend,
Mhm.
somebody, people who are, contacts in whatever they do.
Mhm.
Because those are things that, like say a cleric, who do they, do they have people and, what is their relationship to their church? This way, you can use that to kind of bring in deeper elements and build upon that, make it feel more than just man in, person out there throwing healing spells in
Yes.
heavy armor.
And heavy armor and just wants to adventure
Yeah,
for no specific reason, like, yeah. I think that, like, again, we're going back to collaborative storytelling and stuff like that, really kind of character story arcs really ties in each individual person in a campaign together, mixed with the story arcs of the DM, and kind of melts together to make that, collaborative storytelling. And I think
absolutely.
you say, like, oh, sorry, go
No,
ahead.
I was just agreeing with you.
And I think just like as you say with like who do you know, contacts, things like that, who you talk to. And I think that also gives a lot of space and room for the DM to have kind of a storytelling thing for like sorry, my headache is awful.
That's all right. Take your time.
um tie-ins, character tie-ins. And do you know what I mean? Like maybe you come to this town, and if you are a cleric, maybe you know somebody that's in that town, whatever, who kind of worships the same god or whatever, can help
Mhm.
you progress throughout the story, or maybe help push you in a certain direction if needed, for that.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you there. Um, let's see. So we've touched on backstory. I'm trying to think if there's anything else specifically from the backstory to pull. I mean, you have a sense of where they're from, where they want to be, what their motivations are. Um, you know,
Can we talk about story arcs? What about story arcs? Because we talked already just now, just touching on story arcs that the player has created for their character before coming like into the game or whatever, right?
sure,
Can we talk about developing character arcs within a session and within the world that the DM has created?
sure. So what you have, with between the backstory and the things that you discuss with the player ahead of time,
Mhm.
any campaign is going to be a living, breathing thing. So things evolve, the characters evolve. That's when for me, I start looking at, okay, what have they accomplished and how can I use that? To give you an example, one of my characters, or my characters in one of the previous campaigns that I ran, they managed to find a magic anvil. It was actually a bit of a, not quite an artifact where there's weird things that happen. If you happen to have it, it was an artifact in the sense it was very valuable to the church. It was a dwarven artifact. One of the characters happened to be a dwarven cleric who was also a blacksmith, and so we got the idea that, okay, well, they found this anvil. What would happen if the cleric decided to craft an item on the anvil? And Clark decided to craft an item for another player of all things.
Oh.
Uh, so we got, it became the idea where, well, if we're going to do that, we're going to, do some rolls to see what we get out of this. Ended up with a sentient magical item. And that ended up being its own story arc for both players.
Amazing. I love that.
So it's as you're going, you're looking for, just like in, just like when you're running a campaign, if you're running a sandbox game where you're taking what the players are giving you,
Mhm.
even for story arcs, you want to take advantage of those things that they give you.
Right.
Um, Sometimes, honestly, one of the other things in terms of personal story arcs is, and we've shared these, you know, together, is the story arcs that of things between players, between the characters.
Yes. Yes, I was gonna mention that too. We're talking about Argus and Rowan. Yes, and I
Too
think
short,
that's
but
too
what are you gonna do?
too short, but yeah, exactly. But I think, in that sense too, that's kind of tying into what we're talking about with, creating story arcs or character arcs within the campaign,
Hmm.
that's collaborative, between 2 players instead of, just one player creating a character arc and their story, the character background, and bringing it into the game. um with those kinds of things, it was kind of like with Rowan and so backstory. Rob and I were playing in a campaign together, where our characters ended up haphazardly, not even like, it wasn't even on purpose, it was almost like kind of started off as a joke, and then they it became very serious very fast. And um you know whatever led to, no spoilers, but things led to another. But anyway, so she died. So and I think that's a huge character arc. Do you want to talk about like Argus's, like that's a good topic too, because you had a backstory with a character arc
Hmm.
that kind of tied into this this new character arc that we had kind of created together.
Sure. So, I mean, one of the things was the character that I had still have. Um, Argus is still alive
Still
and
alive.
still alive
He
and
will
very, very
avenge his wife.
still alive and very, very angry. Um, he's he had already had lost. He had, for his personal story arc, his not only had he been framed and basically lost contact with his family, but the only person in his family he was still in contact with is missing and presumed dead. The only thing that he has of hers is one of her guns. And it was kind of the letting Rowan in, you know, uh, letting her understand what he was about. And I mean, the two of them started off as drinking buddies, and
Hmm.
then it became watching each other's back, and then it became we're going to possibly be playing a practical joke on her cousin, and
Yeah.
well, that practical joke turned out to not be a joke. Next thing you know, they were
I love
married.
how I love how in the end we're like, yeah, see, it was real and you doubted us this whole time. That was the
Which,
best part.
interestingly enough, has led to a different story arc where now Thomas's character and Argus are very, very close
Oh, I love
because
that.
there's been actually I need to talk. You need updates on what has happened in that whole thing,
I
but
do. Yeah, we can do
that's
that
a
this
different
weekend.
session.
Yeah.
But it's
Uh,
become one of those things where it has tied the two of them together in a very serious fashion, and yeah, they will be seeing it to the end.
oh, I love that.
Uh,
Revenge for Road.
Now, as a DM, or when you're running the game, the important thing is for that kind of character arc. I mean, those are fantastic character arcs. These, you want to see those relationships grow, whatever the case may be, whatever the interaction is. Um, but you want to be able to help it along, but not get in its way.
Right.
And that's a fine line. How do
Right.
you do without doing too much or too little? You need to give it. And the best thing you can do, at the very least, give it room to breathe. Give them room to role
Right.
play,
Yes, for
um,
sure.
and let it go. And I think we were lucky enough to have that room, um,
Mhm.
in some hilarious fashion. But
But good nonetheless, and I think that's a good point that you bring up. I think like you can kind of breadcrumb it and like leave space for the characters to be able to develop those stories together, or also kind of just leave little bits of things here and there to might help drive that story, but not necessarily tell the story yourself as a
sure,
DM.
absolutely. Um,
Yeah.
Now, one of the important things for me when dealing with a character arc, at least for a character arc where it's a story that I'm helping the player tell, or basically presenting to the player, as opposed to them looking to go do the thing and me telling them what's there. This is the portion where I have things for them in mind already.
Mhm.
Um, is making sure that those things also not only fit the overall story, but don't overly detract from it.
Yes.
It's to the point where if the character arc becomes a distraction to the story, I mean, in a book it's fine. In a multiplayer, tabletop role playing game, not so
It's a little
much.
bit different, yeah, 'cause like you say, in a book, there's only one storyteller. So, I
Mhm.
mean, you're not combating with anybody not combating, but, like, you're not butting heads with anybody else. It's not going to, um, kind of deter the story because you're the sole writer, so you can kind of guide it and lead it whichever way you want to. When you are collaboratively storytelling, that necessarily and always usually is not the case. If you have ever DM'd anything, then you know that your players will always do what you don't want them to do. And they'll go off the rails anyway. So, I mean, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, and also, you don't want them all sitting there waiting for the one
Yeah.
player to, you know, come back to the entire thing. Or it's
Yes.
okay. I found that it's okay as long as the other characters are involved. It's okay to have a focus on a character for a while,
Yes. Yeah.
a little bit.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like
Uh,
for their quest or their story arc or to
sure.
kind of help drive that story. I think that's it keeps the players from going off the rails, don't have the rails. Yeah, that's true. Also good. I think
Absolutely,
was it
Pat.
Pat that said earlier about where the heck is it? Okay, so Demon Gun said a big red flag for me with a player is one who is incapable of finding their own motivation for a character. So I think in that sense you can kind of work with a player and see what their issue is in regards to maybe finding it. Maybe they're not looking in the right place or maybe they need a help in the campaign and in the setting to kind of help find a motivation or a motivator. I don't really know if specifically in your situation, but I think sometimes it can be difficult. Like I find it difficult sometimes, especially when you're making so many characters all the time and you don't want to sound like it's a rinse and repeat.
Hmm.
It does sound like it's hard to find a motivator, and you don't necessarily always want a motivator that's always very cookie cutter. Do you know what I mean? Like you say, like a rogue. Oh, okay, well, I've lost my whole family, and I've been like the very like cookie cutter like rogue backstory. Um, and character arc, but I think that's something that you can definitely work with your players if you're and kind of see what they're struggling to find as a motivator for their character.
I mean, in some senses, Pat, you just kind of touched on it, but sometimes it's just a matter of there's nothing left for them to do. They don't have any other options, so it's adventure and try to find a way to gain some coin or starve. Um,
Yes.
it's and if that's their motivation, that's their motivation. I mean, that's hell. It's a powerful motivator, that's for sure.
Yes. To not sleep in the streets.
All right. So let's see. We talked about the keeping it in line
Dragon?
with the thing. Hmm.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Pat Draw said having a random large dragon sounds from the sides occasionally gets their attention, which is always dragons are always a good motivator.
And sometimes, in some cases, the story may provide that motivation as well. If the players have an idea, I've always, for sandbox adventures, we mentioned last week how they don't have to know who the eventual big bad is. So
Hmm.
sometimes, the initial motivation may be survival, and then the motivation may change from there as
Hmm.
they get a feel for what's going on.
Hmm.
Kobolds are motivation my creep. Hey, hey, listen, kobolds in large numbers are dangerous. Hmm.
Yes, they can be. If they fear kobolds. I think Keith said somewhere. Where did Keith lost it?
I
He said some.
sometimes
Yep.
get loose backstory, then
Mhm.
develop it more as I play the character. Yeah, no, that hey, that's play the character through first level. Yeah, no, heck, absolutely. Um,
Sometimes I do that too. In regards to just seeing the vibe of the group and, you know what I mean, what other people have kind of brought to the table as to what kind of characters they have.
Sure.
That's kind of what Robert and I were talking about, just kind of creating more of a looser backstory and then kind of allowing it the space to develop and grow within the story as well. Because sometimes if you go too in depth with your backstory, it doesn't really leave too much room to kind of develop and grow within the story as well.
And the backstory, one of the things that I always caution players with campaign, if it's starting at first level, um, I don't mind a thick backstory, but your character should not have done a hell of a lot
No.
before. It should be more like what led them to this moment, not what
What
this.
crazy adventures you have, yet you don't know how to yield a sword.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I got the dice sometimes tell what kind of personality they have to an extent. This is also
Yes.
true.
I think that's a good segue too, because even that, like, you can use the dice as a way, like how I think even John does comeliness. Like sometimes that can kind of help bring the personality out in your character. Like for example, Millie had a really, really high comeliness. So like she's, you know what I mean? So she's out here and it kind of swayed her personality where she's like flirting with like this guy and this guy in the tavern and things like that, right? And more outgoing. So I mean like things like that can definitely sway. Um
I'm laughing because I'm not a big fan of comeliness. Never have been.
I'm just saying it as an example. I
No, no,
think that too. So go ahead.
I'm of the mindset. For me, I'm of the mindset is if you want your character to look fantastic, have your character look fantastic.
Yeah.
I've never been a fan of putting a number on it, but
Yes.
it just mostly because of the fact that it's what one person's idea of high comeliness would be could very much differ from another person's.
Right. For sure. I think that's kind of like the personality traits and stuff like that that you can technically roll for as well if you don't want to. Could is a kind of on a role based help shape
Hmm.
your character flaws and things like that can also help shape your character in that regard.
Um, I like that it can influence through, like, I would have a hard time charming her in some because of her scars. All right. Um, yeah. Well, I mean, charisma, having a high charisma does not necessarily mean that everyone likes you. Can very much mean that they're intimidated as hell by you. Villains with high charisma are definitely a trope. What about giving tropes? Speaking of tropes, what about giving tropes to new players? You have an evil twin that people mistake you for. You have amnesia and only this weird letter. So, um,
Oh my goodness.
listen, I'm not. I won't say no,
Hmm.
but that's the kind of thing you want to make sure that the player is okay with, because the problem that can come there is they're kind of giving up a bit of player agency there.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, if your player is willing to go along for the ride, sure, absolutely go for it.
Hmm.
But I would highly recommend that you get the okay from your players to use one of those. Just because if it doesn't work, it's going to lead to a miserable time if they find out that
Right.
they're not enjoying it. And if they're going to be much more motivated to enjoy it if they think it's a good idea. So, let's see.
Sorry.
That's all
There
right.
was a question by IMDb. Did you answer that one already or?
Question. Do you make
Yeah.
characters roll stats in order, or I am not a favor of the roll stats in order.
S-
I don't. I know it is the original, and the original way things were done, and
Mhm.
there are those players who are hardcore. Say, I roll stats in order and I play take what they give. There are certain classes, I don't want my stats. I'm okay with the stats dictating, how badly one of my flaws might be,
Mhm.
whatever it may be. I am
Yeah.
not in favor of having my stats determine what class I can actually play.
Yes, for sure. The reason why I'm I'm, like, snickering over here is typically I always let them just assign wherever they like, always. But every now and then, with our group, we call it roll down the pipe. So just roll down like whatever you have and then
Mm.
just create characters. Because sometimes, like again, like if you're playing D&D for a long time and you're building so many characters, and then sometimes you get stuck into like a certain class or whatever that you're looking for. Um, it's kind of we every now and then we do kind of roll stats down the pipe and just kind of go there and build characters based on what we've rolled just straight down. And we've gotten the most quirkiest, weirdest characters ever. And they're usually just for random one shots, but they're so
Sure.
it can be fun sometimes.
Oh yeah, I mean, for a random one shot, sure. I mean, heck,
Yes.
I'm down for let's see what silliness occurs when we just roll those dice. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine. For campaign,
It's a
no.
little
Mhm.
different. Yeah. Like you
Yeah,
and kind of touching back on what Rob just said earlier, you kind of want to make sure that your player has a character built that they're going to enjoy playing, especially over a long-term campaign and things like that too. Mind you, if you want to roll down the pipe and you want to roll straight down, and that's what you want to do, and and you find that enjoyable and fun, then go for it. As long as you're enjoying the game and enjoying the character that you're playing.
yeah. Doc for Junior. That's where I mean, I didn't start with BX, but I started with 1E AD&D 1E, which had the percentile dice for strength. Which was kind of the weirdest like one-off thing for that it just happened to be strength that had it. I'm still I have to go back and look. I'm still not entirely clear why they made that particular decision. Tracy, this is what I've enjoyed about the one shots recently, trying all sorts of different characters and trying to get into the RP of them. And you did a fantastic
Yes.
job last night with the Primal Druid. That's for sure.
Love it.
It was a one of the characters classes from the Adventurer's Backpack, and I don't know that I think that's the first one I've had the honor of actually uh, having in a game of mine. How much character dev do you typically put into a one shot? Um, hmm.
It depends. I mean, it's totally up to you, as a player, how much character backstory you want to put into your a one shot. Just know and be prepared that, in a one shot, time is limited and the storytelling is going to be an RP is going to be a little bit more limited. So you have to just be okay with the fact that maybe not everything in your character backstory is going to be revealed and come out to play developed in the story the way that you may want to it to happen, if that makes sense. I think for me too, and that's kind of why I try not to get too stuck on creating this huge character backstory, because I find that it might be difficult, or I personally find it a little bit disappointing when I don't get to tell that story fully. And that's kind of why I like to have a loose based backstory so that I can kind of develop that within the story as well. That's again, like that's personal preference. So it's up to you. Like if that's something that you love, like, and I know a lot of players out there who love creating this huge uh character backstory and stuff like that for even one shots or long-term campaigns. And that's totally great. It's up to you and what suits your needs and how you're feeling for that character.
Yeah, and to kind of echo that, I my players from yesterday kind of got the idea that I am, not too concerned about character backstories for one shots when they got their characters. Oh, about a day and a half before the game. So yeah,
Yes.
I mean, give them some details, and then after that, I just let them fly. It's more about a one shot. Generally speaking, I'm normally going to start a one shot with them knowing each other, just because unless it's an
It's
in
easier.
person game where we have time and we're not rushed, having them meet. as part of the one shot is going to take the first hour at least.
If not more,
Yeah,
yeah.
if not more. Heck, if they meet and you make the choice. I was about to, not going to call it a mistake because it's perfectly valid place to start. But if you start in a tavern and they already know each other, there's a good chance that they're going to be there for the first hour unless you find a way to get them out of there.
Yes.
Um, so it's one of those. I let the players run with it. I give them some details as to where their character might be from. Maybe if I think it's going to be important to the adventure. But I had the party yesterday. They were 7th level. I was like, you've all been together for a while.
Mhm.
You're coming down. You've made a name for yourself as a item and person retrieval group. And this is why you've been summoned. And what was kind of funny was that there was a moment where I was having to figure out, thinking on the fly, whether or not something that they kept harping on was something I could actually build into the one shot. And I was like, yeah, no, I can't find a legit good way to work this in. So I was like, nope, nope. There's nothing you need to be. You just need to be concerned about what's on the island.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think like you say, like with a one shot, it's kind of tough in regards to time frame. Like, and typically one shots as it is usually turn into two shots because you usually never get finished within the first session, which can be difficult sometimes. So I think tying all your characters together already and just already knowing them will cut down like Rob said, like that hour and a bit or whatever of just trying
Hmm.
to get to know each other. Also, you never know like what kind of um characters other people have made. Maybe they're not very, outgoing and personable, and maybe they're not really wanting to, join a group and be a part of a group. And then that's time where they have to try to convince them to, be a part of this crew. And that's time that's kind of killed in a one shot when you don't really have that time to spare.
Uh, let Edvard live. Edvard was Tracy's primal druid. Edvard did live.
Aw.
Edvard came close to dying, got chomped, but Edvard did live. Um,
He's not dead.
yeah, bring a T-Rex into play party.
Kinda what do you expect, yeah.
But I think my favorite part of that was watching the character personalities take the impact that they ended up having on the final combat. The mage decided to go hot, basically up into the cheap seats and stay away from the combat altogether. Hi, little bones. Good to see you. Uh, the halfling ranger who had a magical weapon and a potion that would have granted them frost giant strength. Well, I think they missed the fact that they had the potion, but decided, yep, nope, I'm going to go here and shoot arrows. I am not getting anywhere close to that thing. So you ended up having 3 of the characters. Listen, I was sorely tempted to let you lightning bolt the mage because that would
Uh,
have been funny. But yeah, so it ended up being, you got to see the characters spring into action and make their decisions based on who they were, how they were going to fight this enormous creature that frankly couldn't miss. So it was a matter
mhm.
of them killing it before it killed them, because it was going to do a lot of damage every single round. Of course, I couldn't win initiative to save my life, but
Sometimes that's just how ooh, focaccia bread. Yum.
okay, now that's just cruel, Amanda. Did you
Dare
bring enough for the
you.
rest of the class?
You might as well. Come on here. Yeah, see, look, everybody wants some focaccia bread.
I'm not even sure what
Um,
dessert focaccia bread is, but I am
I don't
seriously
know, but
intrigued.
I want it. It's carbs.
Yes.
So in regards to character arcs, has there been, as a DM, has there been a character arc, or a character backstory for you from a player that has kind of proven difficult?
Um. That's an interesting one. Um. In the same campaign where I had a lot of success, I do have one of my friends is he's more there for he loves the combat. He basically he I mean he likes playing with everyone. He's not the
Mhm.
role player.
Yes.
So I had a story for him and got it to work, but it was being very careful about how I brought it out because I know that I can't have a long, in-depth role play conversation session, portion of the session with him because it's just not his thing. So kept it quick and easy. We had some fun. He had his own very um kind of windswept quasi romance hookup with the sea captain. She was the one who's kept ferrying the party back and forth. Decided she liked him because he was a storm sorcerer and could manipulate the winds, which was very, very useful. So yeah, we kept it fast, light, and easy, and it worked well. But it was one of those things where I had the rest of the story that I had for him only could do in bits and pieces because anything too prolonged was probably not going to be comfortable.
Right. I think I have that was a lot of the same issues with me too as personally as a DM, characters or players who are very combat focused. It's hard to kind of drive a story in the sense where I don't always like to have the resolve of if there is a bad guy or some sort of bad guy there, it's either fight or die. I really don't like that trope. I
Mhm.
do like when my players, I like to give them options, if they can either talk their ways out of it or, bribe their way out of it. There's lots of different ways to come out of a situation. I felt like one of my character players always just wanted to just stab, stab, stab everything inside. It didn't matter. No talking was not involved. And it kind of really deterred some of the story arcs that I was trying to drive into the story sometimes. But I think, yeah, you're it can be tough. It definitely can be tough. I am to being asked, so character building slash backstory, do you as DMs want a bullet point or a 1 to 2 page mini story of their life? Do you want to answer
I
first,
can
Rob?
go either direction with that. As long as the one or two page mini story has the bullet points within, and I because if I don't find what I'm looking for, I'm going to ask. If they're built into the story and it's easy enough to pick out, I'm good either way. I want the player to be invested, and some are not going to be invested if they're just doing bullet points. So I'll
Mhm.
work with the whatever it is they give me.
Yes, and I totally agree. I'm the exact same way. I have characters who will give me little mini stories, and I have players who will just give me nothing or bullet points. And like you said, as long as they're enjoying it, and if you want to write a full mini story for a one shot, then and that makes you happy, and that makes you, that's what makes you really get into your character. Then so be it. I'm as a DM, it really doesn't matter to me as long as you guys are all having fun and you have a drive and a reason for your character, like Rob said, to be there and and a driving force as to why you want to adventure.
Justinius raises an interesting question. How
What
do you
is
handle
it?
character backgrounds that endanger the party? I.e., one character is hunted by powerful villains. I'm gonna let you go first with that one.
Okay, go Rob. I feel like you have a story that's like lingering on with that. Are you gonna go first?
Oh yeah, you go
Yeah.
first.
Oh no, me go first?
Yeah, I said I'm gonna let you go
Oh,
first.
oh, you're gonna let me go first. I thought, okay. In that regard, I never really had one that was hunted by powerful villains, but I think I had to kind of, and this is eh, going back to just being a DM and being able to think on your feet and kind of manipulate a story when you can tell that it's kind of going awry or, not where it needs to go. Sometimes you just have to make it so that the situation doesn't benefit it. So like you don't want to make it obvious, but either make it so that the task isn't possible or there you have to almost omit certain dangers. I found just to kind of prevent the character from getting into that kind of situation. Like, for example, the one that just wanted to slice things all the time. Um, I made it more abundantly obvious about who they were supposed to be going after and leaving a little bit less room than I normally would, for different types of interactions that could potentially just cause him to just slay everybody, alive.
Okay.
Robert?
So, yeah, it's kind of funny that you asked the question because the campaign I was just talking about with regards to my one friend, it sort of started off that way where so to give some backstory, the characters were all there for, started off at a funeral. They all knew each other. One of them was a mage, and her mentor was the one who had passed away. And one of the characters was kind of the acting as the house bodyguard. He was a dragonborn who was trying to get a sense of who he was, and the mage had been helping him. Um, we had the storm sorcerer was there because she was helping to find the source of his power. How where did his power come from, as opposed to a wizard's power. And then the other one was just the dwarven cleric was just a kind of friend of the family sort of thing.
Mm.
Well, um, immediately after the immediately after the will was read, they started getting attacked by people who were contesting the basically contesting the will and what was left to the to the mage's character. Um, and they were contesting the right of the wizard to have had it in the first place, saying she wasn't who she really said she was, and that it was all a lie and things belonged to them. So the thing was, what I did was I didn't let them know just how powerful this group was at the start.
Yeah.
I didn't let them know really what kind of danger they were in. The first attacks were very, very straightforward, kind of laughable. They almost looked more incompetent than anything. Um, and it wasn't until the party had kind of come together and decided, okay, we need to figure out what the hell is going on, and make sure that the legacy is kept safe, and the wizard is kept safe, uh that they got a feel for, okay, no, this is bad, this is really bad. So by the time they were realizing what the danger was, they were invested. If
Yes.
you throw it too early, the other characters, the other players are gonna be like, well, why am I here? I barely know this person.
Yes.
What's my motive? Am I just the heroic type who's sworn to protect them from danger? And it might be, but
Mhm.
that can be a bit much.
One of
Hmm.
the DMs I play with uses a tool called the 10-minute backstory. Works real well. Wonder what that is. I've never heard of that. Have
I
you,
have not
Rob?
seen that one, but I have a number. It's funny is I have a number of books that I have yet to read, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's sitting in my catalog somewhere.
Mhm.
Is it a book, Kai, um or is it something like as far as cards, which we were talking about last week? We had the tarot card story thing builder,
Yes.
because it
I'm
does
trying to
sound
see if I
interesting.
can find anything. I'm trying to see if I can find anything online about it. I don't know, but that is interesting too. Let's face it, where dragon sword stuff. And again, like that's right, and that's totally true. If your character is goal driven, right? So I mean, if they're goal driven, then yeah, they're gonna go after that dragon.
I think he was more referring to the books that I have in my collection that I'm not even aware of.
Oh. Oh, Rob is the dragon. I see what you're saying. Now that makes sense.
Group of
uh
back 5 questions to give you a short answer that sets up the background. That sounds
oh.
that sounds interesting. I like this.
You'll have to let us know more about this. I'm interested in this 10-minute backstory. Ooh, okay, thank you. That'd be awesome.
Awesome.
Um I, I think kind of dabbling back my squirrely brain kind of caught up to me now. But I think during the character is it I think it was either character arcs or something that we were talking about where, Robert, you were talking about, NPCs in the world and
Hmm.
having the NPCs kind of like I've always thought that NPCs are kind of like tossaways, and you're talking about bringing them back and making them an important part of the story, the character or sorry, the story arcs and things like that. I think that too can also be used as a good character arc, and driver as well as you kind of say if you're building relationships with these NPCs, can also be a part of your character arc in regards to like Greyhawk, book 2 or book 1?
Hmm.
Book 1. What book is it? Book
That's book one,
1,
the original.
with yes, the OG with, Federum and all that, right? And Lilith spawned to Hamlet and the NPCs in that town too, so there's character arcs that can be created, with NPCs, with PCs, and just within the world itself.
No, absolutely. Every NPC they meet is an opportunity for some kind of story arc, whether it be specific to the character, whether it be for the party. Justinius asks, "Do you require players to provide a number of NPCs?" I mean, I ask for it, mostly because of the fact that it helps give me an idea where they came from, and even if the NPCs are dead, in terms of the character's background, it still gives me something to work with. I mean, how many NPCs? I don't have a strict requirement on that, but the more that I know about the character and their motivations and where they're from, the easier it is to come up with some kind of story that I can tie into them. I mean, one of I've spoken before about my frustration as a character playing, playing a paladin and having, have the paladin kind of not have anything to work with in terms of, a relationship with their god, a relationship with the church that they belong to. This is a holy war, and they don't just do. I mean, yeah, sure, some of them do heroic stuff because it's there and they're just on to the next place. But if every paladin is just a wandering thing, just looking for the next right to wrong, it gets a little repetitive, a little boring.
Mhm,
um, you know, you add when you start adding things, the different hooks in the organizations. The thief, the rogue, are they part of a thieves guild? Do
mhm,
they know how to identify the thieves guild in any given town? And make those connections because connections are information.
mhm,
It's one more way to feed information to your players, and the connections that they've made, um, without there being anything at stake, at initially, where it's just a connection that they've gone and found and, they've cultivated. Uh, those are ways to get information to your players that they're more likely to trust.
mhm.
Um, you know, they have a better sense of, is this information good? Um, you know, because let's face it, players after a while they get suspicious of everything they're told because every time somebody sends them on a quest, they're trying to get them killed.
To die. John. Um, but yeah, no, I think, I agree with that. I think everybody is different a lot of the times. I mean, talk to your DM, and see what they're requesting. I think all everybody's kind of a little bit different. Um, I will request it if I find that I need it for something or if it's important. I typically don't ask it off the hop, and that's just personal preference. Like it's just that's just how I'm more of a very like lax, laid back DM. Like so, I mean, it depends. Like if that helps. Like if you're the DM type that really helps drive the story, like Rob, and you really want that kind of information, then yes. And but for me, like I will ask for it if at the time I can think of it and my squirrely brain isn't all over the place. And I find that and I know that it's important to the storytelling, I may ask for it. And also again, like just always check-ins with your players, even throughout the campaign, not necessarily just in the beginning, but you can check to during the as much as you have, Becca. um, uh, that's so random. Isn't it just like the most randomest thing ever?
And if you have some Tupperware to put in so that she can take some leftovers with her.
Yeah, I can. Yeah. I want some. I mean, only 9 pounds. I can do a lot with that. I'll make a couple of different things with it. That is 9 pounds is a lot, but that's okay. That's fine. Maybe half.
Pat66 said, I have a PDF that has about 1,000 background questions for the players to answer. I select a certain amount and have the player use the questions as points to build a background off of. Nice. That's a hell of a lot of questions. Um,
And I mean, again, like it's dependent on you as a DM and what you're looking for and what you find that would be useful for you, to kind of tell this story that you want to tell, for your players, right? So if you find that it's important and it's something that helps you as use it as a tool, then that's definitely something you can ask your players for. Um, just that the only reason why I say that is because I don't want people to think like, oh, all DMs request, a 5-page backstory with yada 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 yada, because that's not necessarily always the case. Just always communicate with your DM, see what they're kind of asking for, and that's kind of why I'm a little bit more lax in that sense, because I know that there's people out there who genuinely enjoy writing these long character story backgrounds, and then there's the latter where they don't really, it's not really their thing. But they do enjoy, all in all, at the end of the day, they all do enjoy getting together and playing a game. And you can still um, create that character arc and backstory with them, with the player who might not necessarily have it all written out beforehand, if need be, to help them kind of guide them through.
sure. Necromantic DM says, I encourage players to create backgrounds and put in hooks for me to use. And when I'm playing, I leave some things open for the DM to use for the game. Better offer up hooks for the DM than have them suddenly create people from your backstory you didn't know were there. This is always true.
Yes.
I mean, some people struggle just coming up with those details. So
Mhm.
if they're willing to let me put those details in, I'm happy to do it. But yeah, no, for sure. If you're offering up those details to the to the DM, it definitely makes things easier on the DM side. Um, just saying, so I'm a strong believer in using a player's background against them and that their past may haunt them. Well,
I mean, in that situation, that first situation that I totally opened up this session with, it's totally that. We got dark real quick. But I don't always do that. Yes. And here Antiquitous says, I always prefer a cooperative background build, come up with some ideas, and then we can all flesh it out together. It also helps build story arcs, which I agree.
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, listen, the best way, if you're collaborating, if the DM and the players collaborating together, you're going to get so much more, or you should get, ideally, you should get so much more on both sides because you're giving the person responsible for running the game more to work with, and it's stuff that you're going to be invested in. Let's see, Larry. I remember that Natasha had a girl who believed she deserved star level 20 because of, oh goodness, how good her backstory was. Oh my, even I could see it came straight from Reddit. Oh, oh,
Oh,
oh.
where
I'm
did you
just,
see that, Rob? Oh, had a girl
Larry,
who
Larry
believed she
King.
deserved to start at level 20 because, oh gosh.
That's,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, again, this is a collaborative storytelling. You know what I mean? And collaborative goes a long way. You can't really have D&D without being collaborative. So if you demand something, that usually typically doesn't work out. Um, if you write me a 5 or 6 page backstory and give me a summary of the high points reference, I can read through until I can read through the backstory. Yeah, I agree. That's nice. Kind of just, if you do want to go in depth with a really long backstory, I think like cold notes is good too, like you said, to give them time, because as a DM too, you're also trying to create a story and kind of wrangle a bunch of kindergartners is what I usually kind of call them, your player, aka your players, into to kind of like get into some sort of follow your some sort of storyline. So I think cold notes is definitely I would find cold notes very helpful as a DM if you have a very long and in-depth backstory. Cold notes would be very helpful.
I'm going to read another one, but before I read it, I want to ask the player, the Mad Chatters,
Chat.
what is a favorite character arc that you have had as a player?
Oh, that's a good one. Good
Uh,
question.
so while we're doing that, Razkill says I've two players in my group that always give me very rich background, so I try to and make it and try and use it to make story arcs so they don't feel like I'm not grateful for their hard work. And listen, that is the way to be. It's
Mhm,
it is. I tried to make sure that I use something with the stuff that my players give me as well. It's very important because things that they give you, things that kind of help. They help put together or they put together for you hooks that they gave you. You're never going to have them more invested than in those things.
mhm,
So even if it doesn't seem like it works at first glance, talk to your player. If it
mhm,
doesn't, if at first glance it doesn't seem to work in terms of the campaign, um, don't say no out of hand. See if there's a way to make if there's changes available, to make it work. Find try to be flexible as much as possible. It's and it may become a case where it may be a better idea for a different campaign, honestly. But don't go and say that without seeing what can be done. By the way,
mhm.
Kai, I did see the link. Thank you very much.
Oh, yay. Rory says, I let players build their character within the realm of the campaign. However, with Fall of Red Dawn, I made a random table for events each player shared with one another as a familiar point in time, which I think that's a really good point to kind of bring up and tying the characters together
Sure.
and their stories together. Again, killing that time where you have to kind of develop every a little bit, not all the way, but just tying the characters together makes it a lot easier for you guys to collaboratively be on an adventure at the same time. I mean, it can be very difficult when you guys aren't seeing eye to eye on what the main focal point of the campaign should be.
Kai says I love my Dragonborn Paladin Hexblade. Fun to have him balance out his two patrons. Oh, jeez. Kai, I have questions.
So I have a story as a DM. When I first started DMing, I had thrown an NPC in there, and I think a lot of DMs have this similar story where I had thrown an NPC in there that my like a toss away NPC that they ended up just taking on under their wing and became a part of the campaign for a very very long time. So, and then now you're starting to, an NPC that you may not have had even a character arc or a story, a real backstory to them. Now all of a sudden needs a full backstory and a whole character arc of their own as to why they need to leave because I'm tired of running that NPC.
I actually had an NPC that very campaign I was talking about. We had an NPC that I was using at low levels. The that I ended up retiring them. The running joke was he kept going down to 0 hit points, and he was like, I need to get. He's got. I'm like, I've gotten over my stage fright. I need to go be the best bard I can be because trying to adventure with all of you is going to get me killed. I love you all. See you later.
Bye.
And Thomas,
Yeah.
we actually touched on the whole Argus Keen thing earlier. Thomas says, I'm just so glad that we've had so much time with Argus and Keen to have scenes like we had
Oh,
last session.
hello, Thomas. Rory says Gimbal, I think, has been my favorite, but Anaho has been the only character, my only ever completed. Even in other games, the group didn't last long enough to flesh out the character. And I think that's a lot of kind of what I said too about like fleshing out a whole character backstory. Sometimes it can be difficult and you have to kind of be aware. And as DMs, we 100% always appreciate the work that you put in to flesh out your entire character. And we will always try our damnedest to try to incorporate the hard work and that you're putting into the story, like the collaborative storytelling. Just like us, like, we create these stories and stuff like that, and we know that you guys appreciate it, so we appreciate it back as well. And we try to the best that we can, but sometimes, you know what I mean, whether it's by death or just the circumstances of which the story is being told, maybe you might not be able to get everything that you want out of your character backstory, out within the storytelling as well during the campaign. Robert?
So, looking. Anybody else have favorite character story arcs that their own characters have been through? Ah, Moose, there we go. My monk began as an orphan
Oh,
adopted by monks after he saw his parents pulled in two by ogres, orcs, trolls, kobolds as part of an evil army. 24th level now.
wow. I don't think I've ever gotten a character that high.
I don't think I have either. I'm not entirely sure what the highest class um I ever had in terms of levels that didn't start off as a one shot because I did a one shot where we were all 20th level, but
Yeah. Thomas says if you want a master class of including character backstory, check out Rise of the Rune Lords and Alcott's arc. Insanity. Alcott's family was huge part of him, and John used it to its fullest. And again, that's really awesome that you know, to be able to have your character backstory that interwoven into the campaign itself, again, like Rob said, really helps drive your character and the things that they want to do.
Pat, this is your Monsters of the Week character.
Yes, I think he said yes.
Yeah, he was just talking about the uh, Russian youth whose sister was killed by a random monster that didn't exist and was later
Oh,
recruited by the CIA for a covert paranormal group.
recruited
Uh,
by the CVA.
yeah. Pat 66 had a lizard man raised by elves who went on a quest to find his tribe. Got to 10th level when he discovered the tribe was destroyed by a dragon, so he became the dragon slayer. Became a dragon slayer.
Oh,
All right,
nice.
nice,
I
nice.
love that.
Raskell,
Looking
my
for
lizard
revenge.
barbarian was banished from his tribe at 8 years old and raised by a halfling druid. Uh, then the other two party members made halflings, which are considered human children, so protected them. When we went to town, I just took stuff and they followed me and paid.
NPL illustration said I had a really cool Beastmaster while playing Earth Dawn, like a druid slash ranger thing. He started out as this really meek and caring kid that wanted to help his friends but met the wrong mentor. And over the course of 2 years, he turned into something like a barbarian addicted to rage. Love that. I always personally like to include some sort of character quirk. Into my characters that I personally make, whether it's something that they collect, something that they do. I think it's just a nice part of human nature that
Sure.
as a character, as a good RP, a moment that you can always catch somebody doing something like that. So I think that's kind of neat, whether that be journaling, scribbling, writing, collecting teeth, things like that, drinking.
Let's see.
Thomas?
Heart Adventure, for those unfamiliar, Alcott was the second born to a noble family. Just when he believed he was free, his older brother died, tying him to his family destiny, changing his life forever. He lashed out and ran away. This ended in dire consequences as he was unable to be home to defend his family and prove his strength in raising the family sword, which he eventually did, masterfully against those who slew them.
Nice. Revenge is always a good character, story arc, background, or driving force.
Toot Toot's arc
Necro.
got dark, I think. Lol. Being her away from her
Yes,
home to Swisser. I'm thinking Toot Toot was always a little dark, and we're just lying to ourselves, aren't we, Manda?
we are. That's 100% what it is. I'm waiting for the day that character arc really fleshes out and we find out who the real Toot Toot is.
Thomas asks, as a DM, how do you balance focus in a party of 3, 4, or 5 party members and still push their character arcs forward in a satisfying way, narratively speaking? Um, we did sort of touch on this. I think the important thing is being careful not to leave the other characters out in the cold. While having a personal story happening, pieces of personal story happening, is important. You want to make sure that everyone's not just sitting around waiting for the session to end.
Yes.
There are things that can be done. Um, and I always try to find a way to make it so that the others can be involved to some extent,
Right,
and
to some degree.
also make sure that I limit how long each part of it takes. Making sure that, well, how long should an arc be? Um, Honestly,
I'm
my character arcs keep going.
Yeah, I think it depends on the story and what the arc really entails. Some can be you can have a short character arc and you can have a longer running one. Um, I think in regards to Thomas's question, I think a lot of like a good way that I can do that necessarily if allow a lot of breathing room for your characters to RP together to kind of build that bond and build relationships together as characters, I think is really really well good. Which is also a good driving force if maybe one of your characters has a story character arc that they want to follow. um, if your players are all bonded together and you've allowed that time to RP and build those relationships and bonds, I think it's easier for a DM to kind of help guide a character arc story where all the players are not, like Rob said, just sitting in the dark, kind of like waiting, okay, when is the session over? Because it's not about me. Um, if you have built those relationships character to character, I think that helps drive that story because they're more willing to want to help their friend achieve this goal rather than this is my goal. I'm going to do it. I don't really care about what you guys are doing. Do you know what I mean? So I think that can definitely help drive character arc stories while including all the players.
Jaden Prime, first of all, welcome to the chat. Working on my new character for Super Dungeon in Pathfinder. She doesn't have a dark, tragic backstory for a catfolk rogue. Having her seek her path in life through following her deity through dance.
Love that.
I love that. That's cool. I like this.
And it doesn't have to always have a dark and tragic backstory. There doesn't have to be a huge thing about that. Actually, Rizia's backstory isn't very dark or tragic. Like her whole family is alive, and she comes from a family of barbarians, and even the whole Rizia's gold thing. And I did post that. I think it was posted in Blue Buck's Discord about her backstory. The reason why she's going after the gold was just a story that her mom told her from a long time ago, and the orcs in that region call the land Rizia, and that's why the gold belongs to Rizia. That quote was it means that the gold belongs to the land, but because her mom told her that story ever since she was young and they named her after the land Rizia, she believed in her heart that it was for her, not the land. So it was just a kind of a mishap, kind of confusion for her. But it wasn't, she didn't come from a dark past or anything. You can definitely create a very well developed character arcs and backstories without having them dark and tragic all the time.
Sure. And I mean, it's kind of funny going back to Argus for a second. If it wasn't for the Pathfinder 2e, the adventure paths, they have choices that you can have for like different things to immediately tie your character to the adventure. But
Mm-hmm.
he was the youngest son of a family of dwarves, and there were I think I had mentioned like five brothers and sisters ahead of him. So the reason the thing that led him to getting into trouble or getting framed was he was seeking work because he was the youngest child. I mean, there might have been some money, but he wasn't going to inherit the business. The family business. He needed to seek out his own fortune.
Yep.
It was basically you had to leave the nest and make your own way because nothing was going to get handed to you.
Yep.
Pat 66 is how many arcs do you have active at one time? One, at least one per character, and the main story. And
Yes.
the main story, there might be multiple arcs happening. If we're getting close to ending one, I might have already started laying seeds for the second arc of that story.
Yes. I think is again, as long as it's balanced and, it doesn't seem like it's chaotic and, your players are all following the same thing, just kind of play it by ear and see. You can have multiple going at the same time, but I mean, focusing typically is usually on one at the time.
Uh,
Uh,
Keith says, I had a ranger that was the youngest of three. His father was a knight of the rose. He was with his dad when he was killed by a rival knight. When the ranger was a young boy, the ranger grew up to avenge his dad, a task he completed after many, many years. Yeah, hey, listen, that,
My
you know,
name is Enwego Mentor. You killed my father and I'm prepared to die. That's the first thing that came to my
you
mind.
beat me
Sorry.
to it. I was,
Did you really the same
oh,
thing?
absolutely.
I mean, amazing. Always great, 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 great character backstories. Of it, like looking for revenge and avenging, a loved one or a family member or whatever the heck it may be, is always a good motivator and things like that. I
Uh,
totally agree. Party dynamics are present. That hugely helps the DM drive specific character stories. Yep,
absolutely.
agree. Melons from Pat66. Thank you.
NPL illustration. I love doing one-on-one sessions with those in the group that are really into longer or more elaborate story arcs. It's been a lot of fun, and I, as a DM, get to bring in very different themes in a very otherwise dark theme campaign. Hey, that's
Mhm,
fantastic. If if your players are up for that, and
mhm.
as long as the players who are not into the longer, not into the uh not into the longer or more elaborate story arcs are okay with, the side sessions. It's one of those things where, if you're not into it, well, then, have some consideration for those who are. But, just kind of check in with your players, make sure everyone's on the same page about this.
Yes. And also that would be kind of a nice break too from, like you say, otherwise a very dark themed campaign. Sometimes that's kind of nice to have those little breaks. It can sometimes get intense.
Anyone else
Phew.
dual campaign the same group and have players build both an A and B team party, alternating and having the underdog B team follow up on the aftermath of the A team. Wait, dual campaign meaning not two different campaigns, but
The same
two,
campaign but two different
two different
groups.
groups. Oh,
Oh,
that's
my
nice.
ADHD brain would not be able to handle that. I mean, all the power to you if you can, because like I wouldn't be able to yeah, decipher. I think that would be really difficult for me to do that. I don't think my brain would allow me to.
That sounds like fun. I'd be interested in, that would something that I would
If you
definitely be
want to
interested
run
in.
it, Rob, then I will play, but I ain't running that. My brain will not allow. I agree
Uh,
with
let's
Robert.
uh already mentioned I have my main arc and then beginning about one per player, but one arc might go dormant. Yeah, sure. I mean, while another surfaces, sure. You're all. I mean, it's very difficult to have all of your characters have their story arcs actively happening at the same time.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, if they're all looking for something in the same place, sure.
Hmm.
Uh, but there's opportunities. I mean, you may have this. What I find is, and this is where it's important to have that downtime. What
Hmm.
are they doing on their downtime? Because the downtime between, going from place to place, or even what happens when they arrive in a place, is where you have that opportunity to drive those stories forward. Make those contacts,
Those
build all
relationships.
of that story infrastructure, really is what it
Hmm.
is.
Yeah. Pat66 asked, do you consider plot lines and arcs two different things?
So for me, an arc, um, a plot line to me is part of the arc. Because for me, a story arc is is the part of the story that ends up changing the character. And I'm not talking from from a mechanical, they gained a level start thing. Is the character the same person that they were before that particular story began? Um, the hope is not. For good, for worse, for whatever the case may be, you want the character to have growth. And the idea of a story arc is introducing those plot elements for the player to react to and work their way through so that there's a deeper understanding of the character. The character's been through some stuff. They're not they aren't the same person that they were 2 levels ago, 1 level ago, 3 level ago, whatever, however long the arc may last.
Okay. So NPL illustration says that's why they do one-on-one sessions on separate days. So they don't take up time from what they're doing together as a group. I told the group the one-on-ones are open if they're interested, and that too thought that sounded fun. We use these milestones so they don't unbalance the group levels. That's nice.
No,
I think
yeah,
that's good.
listen.
A good way to balance that. Like you say, if some of your characters might or players might not want to do that, it kind of allows that time to flesh those out and feel fulfilled um for their character stories and backstories and stuff.
All right.
Yes. I have loved building up and developing relationships in the text-based RP within the group. So I think what Manda was talking about too is very similar to what NPL illustration is talking about. I think on stream, you do have these conversations and times to, like, John is very, very good at allowing breathing room to be able to RP and stuff like that. But again, when it's on stream and you only have a designated amount of time to be able to play an RP. I think the text RP is really, really good to be able to flesh out kind of some of those things that you might want to flesh out that you might not have time for on stream or might not seem prevalent to the story at the time or whatever. So I think that's really good. I think that's very similar to what NPL illustration is talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. There's some intense RP going on in the channels. That's for sure.
Yes.
And it adds a deeper understanding of the character, and those characters are not the same people that they were when they started that text RP, much less any adventure that they had on screen.
Oh yeah, because that's very similar to Lilith's relationship with Federum. Like she was able to build and develop that relationship with Federum via the RP text. That not normally wouldn't really happen. Have had a chance to happen in stream. So I mean that's very, very similar to that. So I think that's really good too. Yes, there you go. Thank you, Thomas. If you want to check out our awesome text RP, check out the Discord. Linked in the chat.
All right. Well, we're just about at 8 p.m. Um,
Yeah.
and I realize that Jay is still on vacation, so I'm trying to figure out who we could
Ooh.
possibly raid. Mike Disney is on, but he's been on for 3 hours, and I get the feeling well, first of all, it doesn't look like he's at his desk, so I don't know how much longer he's actually going for.
Yeah.
Blue Box of Stream. Thanks, Pat.
Oh, thanks. We're
Hadn't
gonna
caught on to that.
sit tight with us as we're gonna raid into Blue Box. Raid into ourselves. I don't even think you can do that.
5% chance? All right. Do I have them? Yeah, I do have them. All right. Yeah, something we can do 5% chance. They are playing? Yeah, okay, cool.
Mike Disney is fixing to start his Pictionary stream.
Yeah, well, let's go with a group that's actually I wouldn't mind raiding into Mike if he was going to be continuing doing artwork, but if he's going and doing a Pictionary stream, let's go into 5% chance. So once again, first of all, thank you, Mad Chatters. You've been fantastic this evening, with all the sharing of questions, ideas, things that you've done, characters you've had. Vivi, thank you so much once again for co-hosting with me. It's
Of course. I was happy to be here.
yes, and it has been a lot of fun doing this takeover of the channel.
Oh, nice seeing you too, Keith. We need to start a GoFundMe for Thomas this weekend. Quick, hurry up. Yes, see? Oh, Thomas. Oh, we're missing you. Like, everyone's going to be there except for you.
Wow. Stick that knife in.
No, I'm trying to get him to come. Oh, thanks.
That's
Love you,
that's
love you, Thomas. I just really want you there. I'm hoping if I guilt you enough, you'll come. Just kidding.
um,
Uh,
so well, we have one question for you here at Blue Box RPG. If you like the content that you've been watching but have not yet followed, or you followed but not have yet used your Twitch Prime or other method of subscribing, or you
yeah.
subscribed but have let your subscription lapse, or worst of
Injustice.
all, you've been enjoying all this but you have not yet joined our Discord, we
What?
have one question for you.
What
What are you doing?
are
Give
you
us a
doing?
follow, give us a sub. Most importantly, join the Discord and tune in for our streams. Blue Box RPG. There is no Friday Night Crusades this week. Blue Box RPG will be back
Just
on
kidding.
Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central for Tears of Aired.
Yep.
And with that, I say good night, everyone.
Good night. Yay. Oh, I'm not